welcome everybody to NFTs in the Arena. Today we have a very special guest all the way sitting in Singapore. We have an award-winning entrepreneur, marketer and investor, Prentik Mazumdar. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Mikey. Thanks so much. And hello to everyone listening.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to this one because I think your expertise, your experience, and your passion for tech marketing as well as sports is obviously going to come through in this interview. It's something that I want to explore. So just a bit of a background for our audience, for those that don't know who you are. So obviously you're an entrepreneur and an venture investor. And you act, I've done some of my research where you act as a digital transformation catalyst for organizations to help them essentially achieve sustainable change and impact. And I also know something that really drew me to your profile and really wanted to have you on as a guest is the fact that you had started the company Happy Marketer back in 2011, and obviously grew that company over a decade to a multi-million-dollar company, and eventually exiting that company where you were acquired by the American company Merkle. So having said that, I first want to thank you again for your time, and I do have a host of questions that we need to get through. But the first thing I wanted to ask you, Prantik, is obviously being an entrepreneur and being very involved in the tech scene and being involved in businesses, particularly in a country outside of the United States. How did you come up with Happy Marketer, and what is the intention and what is your vision for that company when you had started out right at the beginning?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, I must mention at the outset that the original founder of Happy Marketer is a very dear and close friend of mine from college called Rachit. And so, what Rachit and I basically, when we sort of went down this path, I think we just had a simple vision of two things. How do we make marketers happy? That's why the name Happy Marketer, because we started just after the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009. And, as many of you would appreciate that when markets go down, and perhaps we are in another similar recessionary cycle right now, apart from travel and entertainment, the very first budget that gets cut typically is marketing budget. And we wanted to explore that. Why is it that, something else doesn't get cut, but marketers' budget gets cuts, and, and there's also some sort of pressure on marketers to sort of deliver. So that was one of the questions that sort of really bothered us, and we wanted to figure out how do we make marketers happy. And the second point, which links to the first one, is how do you sort of make marketers happy? And I think one of the things we found out in our research is, marketing for the last 50, 60, 70 years was more of an art than science. And what that really meant is, there wasn't much accountability. People didn't really know that, okay, if I spent $1 million on marketing and advertising, how much returns are we going to get? And hence, if you don't measure, what matters, you start sort of questioning the accountability. You don't know what that $1 million can bring to the table. And hence, when things get a bit difficult, you start cutting that budget. So Rachit and I, being computer science and computer engineering graduates, we said we'll try and bring the science and the data elements of marketing into the picture so that marketers can at least go back to their companies and say, hey, look, you gave me $1 million, out of which $800,000 really worked. Here is what the return on the investment is. By the way, $200,000 didn't really work out that well. So at least whether it's success or failure, using data, tech, analytics, and science, you become more accountable, you become more effective and efficient. So, long story short, that was the genesis of Happy Marketers. How do we make marketers happy? By giving them the tools and the processes of being more effective, efficient, and accountable.
And I totally agree is that I do believe that in the past, and also the advent of social media, which allow people to track marketing spend, definitely changed the game. And I think you obviously leveraged that at the right time. I think in 2012 is when Instagram started making some waves in the social media world. So, and you've also worked with some very reputable brands and organizations. Now I'm going to focus more on the sports ones because obviously SportsFinder, we are an NIL provider helping athletes essentially monetize their NIL through non-digital assets and non-tangible assets. But what you are talking about now by adding these metrics is tangible data, right? Improving to these organizations where their money is going and how effective it is. So having worked with the likes of ESPN, Starbucks, and even Topgolf, something that I'm an avid user of, take me through that experience, and how did you actually garner and secure these big brands, and what value did you actually add to them?
Yeah, so these are big brands, these are global brands. We are based out of Asia, so I think most of our work started from Asia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Southeast Asia, and this part of the world. And I think all of these businesses have offices or representation in this part of the world, and these are massive North American brands who have done so well. So I think the question really started, when we had this conversation with them, is what's the right way for them to expand into this part of the world? How do they make their products and services localized and relevant? Because one of the things in marketing or digital for that matter, I think a principle that is different from how marketing was done back in the day was you first build the product and then marketing is a afterthought. But in today's world or in the digital era, marketing has to be core to the product itself. Which means if you are, for example, ESPN, or if you are, any sports OTT platform, your product in itself has to be scalable. It should have virality features. It should have referral codes built in so that the product in itself can market itself, or the viewers, find it quite easy to sort of spread the word. Because at the end of the day, what is marketing? Marketing is really connecting your brand or your product with the right audience. And you ideally, in the ideal form, I still believe, whether it's digital or not, to me, the ideal form of marketing is word of mouth. If a happy customer goes out there and says, hey, guess what? Here's Top Golf, and I love spending my Friday evenings there. That's organic, that's cost effective, and that's real, that's authentic, all right? So our conversation began with the brand values, but most importantly, how do you make it relevant for Asia, and how do you sort of bring the elements of digital marketing within the product? So that's how the conversation started, Mikey.
No, I think that's good, and it's actually going to take our conversation into the direction that I wanted to. And speaking about, you obviously have a lot of insights and expertise in sports tech venture, right, and understanding the multi-sports, multi-language video content, which is obviously incredibly important now. The World Cup is currently going on in Qatar. It just started today. The content that's coming out of that's obviously going to be probably supersede any other World Cup, or with regards to the various channels, social media being used, and uptick amongst this kind of niche population, which is, I say niche, but it's obviously the most popular sport in the world. So I wanted to get your understanding. You obviously worked with companies in the sports tech industry. You've also had an involvement in sports NFTs. Talking about marketing around NFTs, something that we at Sports Finder have noticed is specifically that the success of the NFT collection for a particular asset will very much rest on that athlete and how they communicate and educate their audience, which is something that obviously I think entities like Sports Finder and the likes would have struggled and actually garnered strategy around that to essentially equip these athletes to go out and sell their product to their audience, who are essentially the people that would be buying it. Can you take me around your thought process of when you worked with NFTs in the sports industry and some scenarios that you had encountered that you actually had to apply a different train of thought than what you would have done in the past?
Yeah, certainly. And, I think any such new concept like NFT, I think there are two ways of approaching it. One is that it says, oh, it's a new thing and it's a new, shiny tool. Let's sort of go try it out. The other is to sort of just take a step back and say, hey, let's try and understand this, and let's try and analyze the why. Why do I need NFTs? Why are NFTs potentially valuable? And let me sort of illustrate this through an example of a NFT initiative that we did in Asia, across Middle East and India, for cricket. In fact, for women's cricket, right? And the context is, cricket is obviously becoming a very, very valuable, very sort of a popular sport. Originally it was only a sport followed by the British and the Commonwealth countries, maybe just 10, 12, 15 countries. But today, thanks to a shorter version, which is more entertaining, thanks to women picking it up, thanks to a lot of effort from the central governing body called the ICC, today cricket is played and followed in right from Brazil to China to Japan to Thailand. And it's no more just Commonwealth countries, and it's not just men. But one of the biggest challenges is that the women's game does not have that much money, right? So we had two objectives. We said, how do we ensure that the women athletes who are doing so well anyway, how do we ensure that A, they have a direct connection with their fan base? B, how can we give them tools to monetize their skills and assets? Because compared to the men, the fees that they make, the traditional brand advertising fees that they make is paltry. So last year during Christmas, we said we went to the Indian women's team, one of the top 4 teams in the world, and we said, hey, what are some of the assets that you have? So, as you would expect, like with any sports person, they have their merchandise, their jerseys, their shirts, their tickets, the balls and the bats. And we said, let's do an initiative which has 2 layers, right? So one is a physical layer. That means we'll have a physical auctioning of your assets. The other is a added NFT layer. And that was phenomenal. It was a very short pilot program last Christmas. And what was amazing is to see that there were people willing to bid and pay a much, much higher price for the digital NFT than the physical asset. And it was a pilot program. My hypothesis was a fan will sort of bid much higher for the physical asset, but it turned out not to be true. So it was very good to see that, people were willing to sort of buy. Some people bought the entire NFT, some people co-owned the NFT. And when we sort of dug in further, I think one of the reasons was, of course, NFTs, this is before the crypto sort of crash and the blockchain crash. NFTs were in vogue, I must mention that. But otherwise, I think, there was a sense of ownership. There was a sense of, very honestly, some people said, look, by owning a digital NFT, I could show off and, show this around to my friends in the digital world. By having just a bat or a jersey, I might wear it, I might show it to my physical friends, but by having the digital NFT, he or she felt a sense of ownership. He or she felt social proof because, they could share it on whatever channels that they like. And the other good thing is the tradability of the asset. So that's, to me, the beautiful part of it, right? If I have any digital asset like an NFT, like today the markets are down, but hey, that's the beauty, right? Tomorrow, if you take a long-term view of 3-5 years, these assets could go up higher. So the tradability or the easy tradability of these assets is also what makes it very, very accessible and exciting for a lot of fans. So stepping back, by doing this NFT exercise, 2 things happened. The women cricketers, they were able to connect directly with the fan base. There was no middle layer, right? It was a great chance for them to interact, for them to sort of share the story behind that digital asset and connect with the fan. They were able to monetize at a much higher value. And for the fan, I think it was the ability to sort of connect, but also have a tradable asset, which, your typical physical auditions make it difficult. Of course, if you have a physical asset, you can do auctions and all of that, but it's much harder because you don't have a marketplace. But in the NFT world, you're part of a digital marketplace, and you could be sitting in Singapore and you could be in US or Brazil, wherever. But, we could trade this and we could sort of showcase what we own. So my perspective to brands or athletes or sporting bodies is absolutely, look, NFTs have been around for a while. There are some great use cases, but start with the why. Like, what is it that you're trying to solve for? Don't just do it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, as Simon Sinek always says, right? Start with the why, and a person that I really follow closely. And it's interesting that you spoke about cricket and women's cricket. We had the opportunity we were very close to rolling out a project with Fair Break International, which was the international women's tournament in Hong Kong. And for various reasons that didn't materialize, but we learned a lot from that. And also myself being a South African and growing up around cricket and understanding the dynamic of cricket. And I agree with you. I think the popularity around cricket, not only because of social media, especially because in the way in which they've altered the game to make it more attractive to audiences outside the general populace that would watch cricket. And I still think there's a huge opportunity for cricket around the world. And obviously countries like India, Bangladesh, Pakistan have grown up and it's part of their culture. And I do see it starting to shift even here in the United States. I see a lot of people playing cricket, which is obviously incredibly interesting to see. So look, you spoke about now NFTs and the utility behind the NFTs. And a lot of people actually, if you understand the why and you actually realize what the utility behind this digital asset is, I think this is the task that individuals like ourselves have to actually take on now, is to explain that the value of the digital asset in which you are initially acquiring, the true utility comes after that, whether it's through one-on-one meetings with that athlete or merchandise or signed memorabilia. But I also feel like the utilization and the utility and the actual mode of NFTs is going to change going into the future with regards to ticketing, season ticket holders, and fan tokens. And we see brands like Nike getting into NFTs with regards to the metaverse. So obviously, with NFTs taking a knock now, and I think a lot of it being not only to what's happened over the last few months of the macroeconomic climate, where it's naturally had a negative impact on the crypto market. I'm sure you've been watching very closely the news in the crypto world the last 2 weeks with regards to FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. So we recently did a cover and a podcast on him. How do you think, I have my own opinion on this, how do you think this issue, which is obviously not the first, but that is one of the most significant, where they're comparing it to Elizabeth Holmes with regards to Theranos, do you think this is going to have a negative or positive impact on the crypto market, which will naturally have an effect on NFTs? And what I'm referring to is the regulation around it.
Yes, I think my opinion is, look, there are 2-3 elements to it. I think if I zoom out and look at it, I think, every time there is a new innovation of this sort, you are bound to have mavericks trying to sort of experiment and trying to sort of exploit any potential. You take it, back in the day, gold coins to any other asset. This is a cycle. Of course, it's very, very unfortunate, both the cases that you mentioned. I mean, personally, I'm more peeved at the Elizabeth Holmes case for various reasons. But if I look at the FTX, I think, again, it's all alleged. Let the justice sort of take its own course. But from what we see and what we read and hear, if all that is true, which looks to be true, I think it's a big disservice to the real companies and the real hardworking entrepreneurs or the folks who have been trying to, make blockchain and crypto relevant. I think what it does is, anything of this sort of creates chaos, undermines confidence in the whole concept, right? So I think in the short term, in the next 1-2 years, especially with the macroeconomic situation sort of not in the best of its health, I do see this to be a volatile lull period for crypto. People even questioning Web3 startups, metaverse, etc. So you see a lot of things coming together. Facebook, which rebranded to Meta, the stock has tanked drastically. Meta, Zuckerberg has mentioned that, this is going to take the next decade. Then the whole crypto thing starts crashing. And then you have these FTX-like situations, which are, at the end of the day, fraudulent. And so to me, I guess the positive that I take out of this, Mikey, is that I'm hoping all of this leads, because a lot of retail folks have lost their money. A lot of investors have lost faith and money. So I'm hoping this catalyzes and accelerates regulation in the space. Because no matter what the innovation is, you always need a healthy balance of innovation, risk, mavericks versus, you need regulators to protect the interests of the common people. And I think, I don't know if this is the bottom of it. If we have found FTX, I dare say there could be a few others, right?
Yeah.
Because FTX is that large. They are invested in so many others. So this could be a beginning of a large investigation. But I would like to believe that, that's one. So I'm hoping that all these fraud issues are dealt with thorough, proper investigation. People are brought to task. That will sort of restore confidence. The other is you need good regulation. Absolutely. Because, any field that is not regulated eventually poses massive risks. The third is, to me, I think, assuming all of this had not happened, I think the other thing that the crypto or the blockchain or the Web3 world still lacks, in my opinion, and maybe it's sort of part of a journey, and it's a risk that I want to call out, is what has happened, or what the AR VR world has encountered over the last 2 decades. I've been seeing different versions of AR and VR, right from big headgears to the Pokemon Go's, etc. But if you look at it, it's still not consumed at a mass level. You and I are not doing this in AR VR. We're still doing it in a physical environment. And I think one of the challenges, and I see that as a problem in the crypto world as well, is I don't think there are simple use cases. That's one. So today, for a common man or a common lady to sort of, go and use crypto beyond just speculating as a trader, I don't see use cases, at least in our part of the world. Like, can I use crypto to get a better deal? Can I get crypto to get access to someone? Can I get crypto to make investing more, equitable and more sort of diversified and democratic? Not yet. So I think there are some great use cases. In fact, I'm a fundamental believer in blockchain, the underlying technology, to sort of decentralize. In fact, that also is a challenge. What the FTXs of the world have proven, that it's a big question: is crypto really decentralized? Doesn't look like it. And there was a great debate between Jack from Twitter and the Andreessen Horowitz guys. Is all of this really decentralized? Because looks like even in this case, the power was held by a few, right? And if that's the case, then the common man who really, and I think if we can decentralize certain things, there's a massive value for the common man or the woman. So I think regulation, simple use cases which become part of daily life, as well as just ensuring that some of these things live up to the core promise of decentralization, that we don't have to rely on governments or central banks or the powerful mafia. I think if these three things can be proven, it just restores confidence. And if that happens, I think the use cases, whether in sports, whether in other startup world, I think we'll start seeing that coming. So I'm still a long believer, but I think in the next 2 to 3 years, there's a lot of cleaning up that needs to happen.
Yeah, and I think you touched on various facets of what I truly believe, and one of them is, or let's break it down into two, is the scrutiny in which the industry is currently under now because of individuals like SDF, which does impact people like ourselves that are trying to pioneer an honest and almost an accessible technology that everyone can use and actually benefit from. And this does play a part in also the impact on investor confidence, right, and industry confidence. Because I'm not the same opinions of you. There's so many use cases. You can use Uber, you can use Airbnb, where the laws essentially are always lagging 2 years behind the innovation, right? And I think initially, like Uber, like Airbnb, had made tons of money whilst not being regulated. And once it does become regulated, they remain, but the costs that we as customers experience is far higher now, and something that we would have to consider with gas use, for example. And I'm also a firm believer that I think everything that the FTX had stood for goes against why they had probably initially created that organization. We're creating a blockchain that's decentralized. And I do think this is going to have initially a negative impact and positive impact in the future. But like you said, if you are in this, you are naive to think this is going to materialize over the next year. So I really like your point on that. So we obviously at SportsFinder are looking at ways and unique ways in which we can work together with organizations. So particularly here in the United States, we're working very closely with the colleges in the sports realm. So like UCLA, USC, a lot of the main organizations here, we are working with them and helping them and their athletes essentially monetize the NIL and educate their audience, because now we are in the Generation Z where they know about NFTs. It's about this word of mouth which you spoke about. So I do know that there's a lot of athletes that have come out, like I think actually today, Cristiano Ronaldo came out with his NFT collection on Binance, which is also a very interesting figure in this whole FTX triangle, if you want to call it that. Do you see that NFTs in the sports world will move far beyond just the initial digital asset and fan tokens? How do you see sports? Because of my opinion, I think they are pioneering the Web3 space. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, again, if you step back and if you look at the sports industry over the last century or so, there have been four basic ways to monetize sports. Either you have gate ticket revenue, or you have broadcasting revenue, or you have sponsorship, or you have merchandise and memorabilia. To me, what's exciting is, at the end of the day, is I think the world of Web3, Metaverse, NFTs, I think it opens the door to be creative, to allow all of us to be creative, to solve for two or three things. One is, again, like I said, connecting the athletes or the sports sort of stars directly with the fans. To me, there's a massive power in that. We have seen with startups like Patreon, etc., where today you can sort of use it to sort of get customized videos, etc. So I think whether it's, like I said, the NFTs, Web3, I think one fundamental principle for me is direct connection and engagement. It's not just connection, it's about engagement with the fan, right? And again, to me, if you look at any sport, right, whether it's NBA, NFL, cricket, soccer, whatever, if you put the athletes, you'll always have the Cristiano Ronaldos on the top. To be honest, they are that good and powerful that, they have all the options available to them for monetization. They are an institution by themselves. But to me, the power of the NFTs and all of these decentralized tools lies for the middle and the bottom, right? That means even if I may not be a great, maybe I'm just a college star, but if I bring other facets of my personality beyond the game, it allows me to extend my life cycle, my monetization life cycle. Because you see, the other thing about sports is your sporting career is typically 5 years, 10 years, max to be at your peak in your 20s, essentially. What happens thereafter? I think these platforms allow these sporting athletes or celebrities in general to sort of use their peak time to create the brand, which they can then monetize and milk over the next few decades, right? So I think that's, to me, is the second power, is direct connection with the fans, direct engagement, and to build your brand persona. And, as we have seen with various basketball players or cricket players or soccer players, is over time, post-retirement or near retirement, they bring other facets, right? They all get into some sort of music. They do endorsement of with different kind of apparel and shoes. They have their own shoes. So I think what this will do is, especially for the middle to the bottom of the pyramid, it'll give them opportunities to create their own assets, not necessarily limited to sport, but limited to their brand persona, right? So to me, that's one power. The second is, I think, just the element, especially in the fourth bucket of memorabilia and any merchandise. I think the authenticity to ensure, because I think there's a huge element of fraud in any sort of world of luxury goods or memorabilia. I think where technologies such as blockchain and NFTs can help is, again, authentication, that this is an original piece, and B, the tradability of it. So I think those two elements to me are very, very exciting, because if the moment you create a marketplace and make assets tradable, provided the marketplace is relevant and large enough, there is latent value in it, right? You're sort of holding this not just to sort of keep it in your shelf, but to also sort of trade. And I think the more the trades, the more the value. So to me, I think, for these elements of authenticity, direct connection, as well as the tradability, I think that becomes very exciting. The other thing is, when I talk about monetization, something that's very close to my heart, Mike, is micro sponsorship. So I'll again use, maybe examples from Asia, because again, unlike the US, a lot of sports are underfunded. So I'll give you a real example, right? Maybe a year, 2 years ago, I saw a post of an Indian badminton, upcoming star. She must have been ranked number 10 in India, which is great in a large billion plus people. If you're ranked 10 in India, which is not bad, but it's heavily underfunded. And her post literally said, look, I'm looking for $10,000. You know what? I'm going to spend it in my rackets, my shoes. She's given the breakdown. And it's a great post. It goes viral. It's emotive. It had 200,000 likes. But the question is, wouldn't it have been better to have $200,000 than 200,000 likes? And then I started pondering about this. And the good thing is, I'm sort of seeing a few new models emerge where you and me as just individuals could directly micro-fund the athlete. And there are various models. You could just give it as a donation, saying, you know what, from my side, $10. Or it could be a subscription. From my side, $10 every month. Or it could be a loan. Like, I'm going to give you a 0% loan. Here's $100. Whenever you make it big, hopefully you'll, give it back to me. And you can sort of rotate that money for athletes. Or you could also own a piece of her career. That, hey, here's $100. And you know what? There are organizations now creating a entity for her career, saying, you know what? Here is the value, that $10,000. Prantik owns, maybe 1% by giving $100. Well, if she becomes big, I own 1% of her career earnings, so to speak, right? And there's a bit of ownership beyond just the money. So I think these, again, NFT is a great start. But if I look at the next decade, to me, it's about just the decentralized, authenticated, tradable way of connecting fans and sports stars, whether in terms of investments, loans, or just purchasing memorabilia. To me, that's what I'm excited about, because I think sports is such an interesting domain. It's one of those last bastions of content that is exciting because it's uncertain. You have no idea who's going to win, right?
I totally agree.
So yes, I think over the next decade, I think we'll have a lot of these unfortunate, unregulated issues, fraudulent issues, etc. But I think I'm just waiting that, and the more the Nikes and the, what you guys are doing and the larger institutions start taking this up, and as people see value, both not just monetary, but also emotional value, because, sports is a domain most of us play or follow sports because of an emotional connection to our identity. So the more financial and emotional use cases we see, I suspect, I reckon that, we'll see this domain growing.
One last thing I would say to that is I 100% agree. I'm an avid Manchester United fan, and I literally cannot connect with the organisation because of its owners. But talking about engaging with the fans and athletes have been allowed to connect, that's something that's been lacking on a mass scale, I believe, and you all know that for sure. So I know we are running out of time, and the one thing I just wanted to cover at the end is obviously you're a regular columnist and you write for marketing magazines. You write for the Economic Times and Business Times. What are the next things that you are working on, and how do people connect with you if they want to connect with you from our audience?
No, thank you. Absolutely. So, to me, there are sort of three areas that I'm working on. One is SportsTech. I think that's very close to my heart. And again, I use SportsTech as a very broad term, but specifically anything to do with, I guess, three areas. Sports content, video content, long or short. Second is sports education. And the third is the whole element of sports funding and micro sponsorship. So any sort of discussion or investment proposals there are great. The other is in the world of, early stage investments. And sports is one bucket, but I also look at anything that is around using technology to bring about positive change, be it in terms of society, be it in terms of financial inclusion, be it in terms of any sort of creating technology for equitable access to opportunity. I think that's exciting for me. I'm easily reachable via LinkedIn. So if you go to LinkedIn and just type my name, Prentik Mazumdar, which I presume would be on the title or the show notes, just drop me a message. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it, and thank you for your time. And for everyone watching and listening, please like and subscribe to our YouTube and to our social media channels. I'll put Prantik's LinkedIn handle in the description of the video. I want to thank you again and really appreciate the time. I hope to have you on again. And just for our audience to know, in the coming weeks, we are doing a new collection with New Haven University, as well as we may be exploring some great opportunities with varsity sports, something that we're really excited about. Thank you for your time, Prantik. I really appreciate it and hope to connect with you soon. Take care.
Same here. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great one.
Of course.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.